Roaring Twenties was a dynamic decade of cultural, economic, and social changes in the United States. It was marked by booming industry, consumerism, and stock market growth. It brought prosperity to many. Television and radio reshaped daily life. Women gained new freedoms, including the right to vote in 1920. The era's dramatic changes sparked tensions between traditional values and modern lifestyles. Nowhere was this societal tension more prevalent than with the heady desires for a good time competing with the highly influential movement for temperance. The teetotalers were able to usher in the 18th Amendment and the Volstead Act, which outlawed the production, transportation, and consumption of alcohol. One of America's largest industries was suddenly illegal. And criminal organizations were grateful to receive the gift of a new source of income worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Legislation was no match for the public's demand for alcohol. Speakeasies, or underground bars, sprang up on every block. These illegal bars were hidden behind unmarked doors, in basements, or in back rooms. These clubs became cultural hotspots, often with live jazz music, dancing, and socializing. The success of speakeasies signified the public's disregard for prohibition and a rebellious spirit. To meet this new demand, bootleggers and smugglers stepped in to import liquor from Canada, the Caribbean, and Europe. Moonshiners operated makeshift stills to produce strong, corn-based liquors. Hijackers targeted industrial alcohol supplies to distill them. This nefarious supply chain was an unintended consequence of prohibition. Competition for customers became fierce and violent. Nowhere was this more evident than in the city of Chicago. Organized crime families staked out their turf. The largest were the Chicago Syndicate, also known simply as the Outfit, and the Northsiders. Territory disputes between the rackets were settled with bullets and sabotage. Everyone was willing to go to the mattresses for market share. Chicago was ripe for gang violence due to its corruption and lawlessness. The gangs bought off the coppers, politicians, and judges. They were fully in the pocket of the criminals. Out of the chaos, a charismatic figure rose to the fore. Alphonse Capone took the reins of the Chicago Outfit. Capone became the archetype of the celebrity gangster. His infamy made him a household name. He styled his public persona as a generous, self-made man of the people, meanwhile running his criminal organization via murder, extortion, and greasing the right palms. His flashy suits, luxury cars, and fancy nightclubs were the trappings of his success. And he spent lavishly, requiring more and more to fuel his decadent lifestyle. He would often taunt law enforcement with digs such as, "I am just a businessman giving the people what they want," or "they can't collect legal taxes from illegal money." It was all part of his circus. The gang wars raged. Bosses and soldiers alike were murdered on the mean streets of Chicago. Tommy guns and six-shooters meted out perverse justice, intimidation, and payback. And the authorities continued to look the other way. The public yawned. The violence reached a crescendo on February 14, 1929, St. Valentine's Day. Capone's Outfit issued a contract hit on their North Side nemesis, Bugs Moran. The killers entered the Clark Street garage where Northsiders were known to frequent. The paid assassins took their rivals by surprise as they impersonated police officers and forced their targets to line up against the wall. The Tommy guns unleashed with .45 caliber fury. Once the smoke cleared, 7 would die as a result of the grisly scene. Hardcore mobster Frank Gusenberg lived a few hours but refused to point the finger at his killers even as he lay dying. The headlines and photographs told the story. The public was outraged, horrified, disillusioned. The boldness and brutality of the bloody massacre shocked them into reality. Opinion turned against the gangs, the bootleggers, and Capone himself. The infamous Valentine's Day bloodbath was the beginning of the end for Capone. Police and prosecutors endeavored to search for the guilty. Capone was in Miami at the time, and while not involved directly, everyone knew who had ordered the executions. The obvious motive being to take over the North Side and its throngs of black market customers. After the murders, evidence was recovered including a cache of guns, police uniforms, and the black Cadillac used in the gangland slaughter. While many suspects were gathered, no one was ever tried for these murders. All signs continued to point to a murder-for-hire plot to insulate the outfit's involvement. In an odd twist of justice, the main suspects would be dead within 2 years. As for the legacy of the carnage on Clark Street, it would contribute to the repeal of Prohibition and new gun laws. America learned a lesson in failure due to attempting to legislate morality. Prohibition directly created a lawless and dangerous black market. Unfortunately, it took 13 years of rampant violence to learn that lesson. Due to its corruption and greed, Chicago would never act against the outfit. Everyone was still on the take. Citizens eventually cried out to President Hoover to condemn this public enemy of Chicago. Hoover was disgusted by the lawlessness and the brazen mob boss. He dispatched his G-men in the form of the FBI, the Treasury, and the IRS. It was the IRS that collared Capone for tax evasion. He would do 18 years hard time with a stint at the notorious Alcatraz prison. He lived out his final years in Miami suffering with advanced syphilis. How is it that most people know so much about this scandalous crime boss? We know about the massacre. We know about the tax verdict. We know where he went to prison. We know he had syphilis. Whatever the varied reasons, the age of Capone was firmly cemented in the American psyche. The die was cast and his legend would endure for generations. Perhaps no cultural obsession has been exceeded by the mythos of organized crime. Obviously, there is the allure of power and wealth. But, also aspects of rebellion, defiance, and base human instincts. Whether it be Omerta and its code of silence or Cosa Nostra and its family orientation, society and audiences alike have shown a perverted admiration for men who live by a code based on loyalty, family, and self-rule. And this deep fascination being a direct legacy of the OG, original gangster, Al Capone. Born out of this cultural phenomenon comes a new public desire. A bloodlust for entertainment centered around the world of organized crime. Terms like boss, underboss, consigliere, capos, rats, earners, and soldiers will enter the vernacular. Made men will now bring an inherent respect and fear. Just as the black market satiated America's want of illegal alcohol, Hollywood stepped in to tell glamorized stories of organized crime that viewers clamored for. And they did it exceptionally well. Best Picture awards went to The Godfather, The Godfather Part 2, The French Connection, and The Departed. The box office haul followed suit. These films were good earners. The Godfather trilogy raked in over $1 billion. Casino, Road to Perdition, Gangs of New York, and The Departed all topped the $100 million threshold. Organized crime movies became among the most successful subgenres of film. Crime films offer exceptional storytelling conveying universal themes such as power, loyalty, betrayal, family, and morality. And just as importantly, they draw the best talent to their projects. Directors, actors, writers, cinematographers. Everyone wants a share of the cinematic success. Mobsters are the most interesting characters of all time. And no one is more interesting than the man in charge. The mob boss. The boss of bosses. These are the most recognized names and faces in film and television. There's the indelible performance of Marlon Brando as Don Vito Corleone, the ultimate organized crime family head. Or Robert De Niro as the man himself, Al Capone, in The Untouchables. These are the titans of the movie screen. De Niro, Pacino, Nicholson, Cagney, Brando. The best actors of their generations. And each of them whetted their beak with the juiciest of roles, a mobster. Then there are the actors who made a star turn as a gangster with their exceptional performances. Ray Liotta delivered a wrenching performance as Henry Hill in Goodfellas. And Joe Pesci thrilled as Tommy DeVito in the same film while also nailing his role as Nicky Santoro in Casino. The list is long. Conn, DiCaprio, Depp, Denzel, and on and on. Ladies and gentlemen, behold the GOAT. The greatest of all time. No character in history has been more intriguing than Tony Soprano. No actor has so fully delivered their character as James Gandolfini. Tony, being the boss of a New Jersey crime family, easily drew us into his world. A very complex and compelling universe with layer upon layer of humanity and inhumane acts. We root for Tony to deal with his childhood trauma, to be a father and husband within his own family, and for Tony to manage the daily grind of murder, mayhem, and ducking law enforcement. The novel hook with The Sopranos is that we get to participate in Tony's therapy sessions, which typically address his childhood traumas and his ongoing panic attacks. The audience is there for every interaction, every fight, every grift, every whacked enemy. The audience deeply knows Tony Soprano and cheers for his anti-hero success. With the help of the series format that allowed deep character arcs, Soprano permeated the American psyche just like the real-life archetype Al Capone so many decades ago. Organized crime films will continue to flourish with new stories and new conflicts. Perhaps someday we will see a blockbuster about the life of the dapper Don John Gotti, a boss made of the same cloth as Capone. Until then, keep your friends close and your enemies closer.